Morning or good afternoon again. This is 24.2 part 2. So if you watched the first video, it was probably a little long. I apologize. I'll try and keep this one a little bit shorter. But we ended with this slide right here that says the Treaty of Versailles, the Kellogg-Briand Pact, the Washington Conference, and the Rape of Dan King. And really, maybe I didn't set enough context with World War II in the very beginning. But when I say research, you just need to type this into a Google search and then find a site or two that can give you a little bit more information. This process of online learning will require you to do a little bit of research on your own, but if you have an understanding of what the Treaty of Versailles stated and how Germany felt as though they got the raw end of the deal, it's going to help explain a little bit why Hitler and Germany will take a course. It doesn't justify why he did what he did, but it justifies their belief in how they were wronged in the deal, and therefore they need to violate the Treaty of Versailles and start to rebuild. All right, so that's our first slide that we stopped there. Let's continue on. So I think you may have seen this one. I talked about that cartoon being the League of Nations and a dog with all bark and no bite. They couldn't really enforce any of their policies except for economic sanctions or boycotts, which a boycott is when you don't buy or sell to a certain person. And economic sanction might actually be like an economic penalty where you might increase a tariff or you might, again, stop buying from a certain person, okay? All right, in our government today, here in 2020, we take these actions all the time. President Trump has put economic sanctions on Iran, for example, and we boycott certain countries who we don't think have the right political systems. We may not buy products from them, okay? All right, but besides Japan becoming militaristic and nationalistic and more aggressive in trying to take territories in Asia, Germany certainly feels as though they got the raw end of the deal, as I said, from the Treaty of Versailles. So Hitler, we already studied Hitler in the rise of fascism, and you know that he's going to use violent, brutal, terroristic, fear-minded tactics to come to power. He's going to have his brown shirts, which are going to be his henchmen or his gang that supports him. He's going to take some rather unethical, unscrupulous, and certainly perhaps even illegal ways of wresting power away from the president, and he's going to assume the leadership of Germany. When he does this, we know that he has a 25-point platform. There's more to it than just that, but for simplistic reasons, it's a 25-point platform. So as you can see here, Hitler is going to violate the Treaty of Versailles by pledging to rebuild the German military. He announces a reformation of a massive air force. He's going to start compulsory military service, which basically means once you turn 18, you must join the military in some capacity. And that's going to build a large standing army very quickly. He's going to challenge France by taking troops to the Rhineland, which is that small chunk of territory between France and Germany that's been fought over for hundreds of years. And Rhineland in the boldface print is going to be something I want you to research. Just know where it's at. If you can find where the Rhineland is on a map, if you type in Rhineland 1935, you should be able to get an image within seconds, and you can be like, oh, that's the area where the troops were stationed at, okay? But another thing, too, is that Germany is going to begin to start taking territory. A little bit of time. Again, the Rhineland might be the first step, but you have to see how Hitler is aggressively and blatantly violating the Treaty of Versailles. And the League of Nations says, oh, don't do that. You're not supposed to do that. And they don't do anything about it. And this is going to be the policy of appeasement we're going to get to in a second. All right. Down here it says Mussolini of Italy. You know him. Okay. Mussolini began his quest to build a new Roman Empire. So they're going to invade an African nation known as Ethiopia. Now, although this campaign wasn't nearly as neat and clean as Mussolini had intended, and although many look back historically, I'm like, why did they pick Ethiopia of all the places to invade? They did use chemical weaponry, and this alarmed the rest of Europe. And like, whoa, 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 whoa. We saw all this during World War I. Why are we doing this again? Why are you being aggressive? Why are you taking Ethiopia? But also the tactics, the military strategy you're using. Man, Mussolini, who are you and what are you doing? So this raises some fears, okay? But the final bullet on this slide that perhaps maybe you should take note of is this one. Hitler and Mussolini are going to join into a treaty of friendship and alliance known as the Rome-Berlin Axis. An axle holds your wheels together, right? So it goes to the middle of the wheels. Think of Germany and Italy just south of it. That's the center of Europe. So this Rome-Berlin Axis is going to be a partnership between Germany and Italy, and they're going to be known as the Axis powers because of this agreement. The Axis powers you need to know because that's going to be one of the sides in World War II. Of course, you know alliances. So in the previous video, I talked about Japan becoming more militaristic and imperialistic, okay? And they were certainly becoming more nationalistic. So there's militaristic, imperialism, and nationalism. And now we have an alliance being formed between Germany and Italy. We have all the factors of MAIN, the main causes. Keep this in mind, World War II is coming. All right, a key word. So if you're trying to figure out what to note, appeasement. As Hitler expanded this territory and rebuilt his military, Great Britain and France did little to stop him, choosing instead to follow a policy of appeasement. I would love for you to research that a little bit further. Again, Google tab, just look in the policy of appeasement. You may have to give a timestamp like before World War II or prior to or 1938. And you're going to get some things that will explain what this is. But basically, it's this. The appeasement is allowing certain actions to take place to avoid conflict. Let me say that one more time. Appeasement is like allowing certain things to go on to avoid conflict. So if you have siblings, or when you're babysitting, or at other times, perhaps with high school drama, you're going to tolerate and allow certain behaviors so as to not get into a fight or a dispute or conflict with others. That is a policy of appeasement. And Great Britain and France, because they are so desperate to avoid war, they're going to allow Hitler to kind of do his thing to avoid conflict, okay? Hitler wants to add Austria to his empire, which of course he was born there, right? And he wants to create this German Reich or empire, okay? Understand, if you are a Star Wars fan, like some of my students are, or you understand this, the evil empire of Star Wars series is kind of modeled after the evil empire of the German Reich, okay? But basically, Hitler is going to go to Austria and he's going to tell their leader, hey, listen, either you join us or I take you by force. And so after a little bit of thinking about it, the Austrian leader notifies Hitler, UK, we'll join with you. We'll be okay with this. Just please don't invade us. And Hitler says, okay, I'm glad you saw my way. You're now part of us. And then, of course, he quickly invades Austria. And when I say invades, he simply marches his Nazi military into the streets of Vienna, the capital of Austria. And when he does so, the Austrians are very confused. They don't know what this Nazism thing's going to be, but they're very concerned about what Hitler and his military can do to them. So the Austrians reluctantly kind of like, oh, I guess we're Nazis now. Here we go. Okay. So Hitler, after marching his troops there, proclaims this idea of Anschluss, right, or political union with Austria. So let's write this term down in your notebooks and know that Anschluss is going to be this political union, or union in this case is joining with Austria. So we've got an axis or an agreement built between Germany and Italy, the Rome-Berlin Axis or alliance, and now he's picking up Austria. So Great Britain and France remain spectators, as my notes say there, but really they're watching this very closely. And many in France and many in Great Britain are very concerned about what's going on in Central Europe and Germany. Okay. In 1938, later on, Hitler signs the Munich Pact, which allows him to take the Sudetenland, another term that's italicized in boldface print. You should write this down, Sudetenland. And what's going to happen is this. My fist, if you could be right here, we're going to go this way. So if Germany was here and this was Czechoslovakia, this nation, this territory here that borders Germany and Czechoslovakia, it would be the western border. This would be known as the Sudetenland, which many of the residents were either ethnically or historically or culturally German. They're German speakers, but they're part of a country called Czechoslovakia. No matter. Hitler is going to invade and take that property. And the Czech Republic or the Czech government is like, wait a second, these are our people. What are you doing? And they ask the League of Nations and they ask other European countries for help. And people are kind of like, oh, sorry, we can't really defend against him because we don't want to start war. Okay, so during this Munich Pact, it's going to be something that basically Great Britain and their current prime minister in this time period, Neville Chamberlain, he is trying to say, hey, okay, we understand you're trying to pick up some territory that you lost during the Treaty of Versailles, the end of World War I, but you really need to stop. It's not quite a slap on the wrist, but it's like, hey, I'm really saying, dude, you need to slow this down, okay? So, of course, just a few months later, Hitler is going to annex, so that means take, more property called Bohemia, okay? So when Britain and France stay on the sidelines and they never actively enter the game with some sort of force or some sort of significant consequence, it's just emboldening Hitler to do what he wants to do in Central Europe, okay? All right. Besides Hitler, Mussolini is also going to invade Albania, which is across a little stretch of waterway. All right. So I think that's my last slide for today, or it's my last point of speaking. All right. So where then are we? So we've got Great Britain and France on the sidelines. We've got Italy becoming aggressive. Excuse me. We've got Germany becoming aggressive. Literally, he's picking up pieces of puzzle pieces of Europe. He's expanding his military. He's having people drafted. And when I say he, I'm speaking of Hitler, of course. So where are we in the 1934, 5, 6, 7, 8? Where are we politically and governmentally? So we did very little to slow down the Japanese nationalism and militarism, and we do even less to slow down Hitler. Hitler is actually going to host the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, and we send our athletes. And Jesse Owens, one of our most famous and historic Olympians of all time, wins several races. He's African American, and he kind of throws water on Hitler's ideas of a master race. But we're understanding what Hitler's doing. Okay, we simply are going to try and take some economic steps. But notice on this slide, in the middle of the slide, it says the Neutrality Act of 1935. All right, so the League of Nations is going to ask us, which remember, we're not part of the League of Nations. So the League of Nations is going to place an embargo upon Italy, and that is that they're going to try and stop selling or buying certain products, this being oil, for Italy. If there is no oil to then, you have to take oil as a raw product and refine it into gasoline. If a country doesn't have oil, then their apparatus, their factories, their machines, their cars, their vehicles, their tanks probably couldn't be powered. So by limiting the fuel to Italy, they can't be as aggressive as they're being. So this is a League of Nations idea. When we're asked of this, our president, President Roosevelt, is kind of like, you know what? We're not part of the League of Nations. And because we had signed this Neutrality Act, we're staying neutral so that we can still buy and sell from anybody we want, regardless of what their military ambitions are. Okay. So the Neutrality Act is going to prevent us from supplying arms or ammunition or implements of war to nations in conflict. Okay. So as you can see far down the slide, it says Congress passes additional neutrality acts in 36 and 37, all designed to keep us out of conflict. The whole point is, let's just try and stay isolated and away from these big conflicts. And so our last bullet then is isolationism, right? So again, like Europeans, they recalled the horror. So we were remembering what World War I was like, even though we were only involved in the last year to maybe 16 months of the conflict. This is not something we want to be part of. So for this one, if you could look up where the Rhineland is and have an idea, the policy of appeasement, Munich Pact, right? Anschluss and Sudetenland. So how do these kinds of, so Anschluss, remember, is the joining of Germany and Austria. Sudetenland is taking of some more territory. And then the United States Neutrality Acts of 1935, and I think it was 38 as well, okay? So if you're wondering like what to do, you should have been taking notes as I went through these slides. And again, you could always pause and write things down. I think the boldface print and italicize are often good things, right? But then also you should be researching these things. All right. So we have done a small introductory part to the chapter. I'm hoping you're starting to get kind of some context. I'll be back with 24.3 later on. All right. Have a great day.